Hey guys, Freddy here. Welcome back to another retro adventure. The end of another week, the end of another poll. We've got a very clear win for The Power Behind the Throne, the third part of the Enemy Within campaign for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. Now, as usual, I'll cover that on the desktop in a wee second. And I'll be back at the end of the video with some other channel-related news and some other poll-related news. But before I do that, I'd like to take a moment to talk about my patrons, who this week I have been told have perfectly shaped ears. Now, I don't know what that means, but they are perfect in so many ways, including that they help support this channel. Now, if you'd like to help support the channel, or you'd like to see these videos a week early, or you'd like one of the other things that we offer through Patreon, then there's a link in the description down below. If you check it out, it'd be very much appreciated. But anyway, let's have a look at the Power Behind the Throne. So, this is the Power Behind the Throne, which is for the Enemy Within campaign. It's the third part of that campaign. It's for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. And this version is the 1998 release from Hogshead Publishing. If we look at the spine, we can see the Hogshead logo there. Although it originally came out from Games Workshop much earlier, I think it was 1988 it came out originally. Now, this version is expanded slightly, with the inclusion of an adventure to link it to the previous adventure, Death on the Reich. But let's have a look at the back cover, because it details that. So, new expanded edition. Intrigue, corruption and death in the great city of Middenheim. Refugees fleeing town, ridiculous taxes, priests of Ulrich and Sigmar fighting in the streets, and rumours of beasts in the sewers. Something is very wrong in the city of Middenheim. In the confusion of the city's carnival, only the cunning and the brave will be able to cut away a web of conspiracy and aristocrats with secrets to hide, to uncover the hand behind a plot to control the city itself. Or will there be death and hell to pay for it? A small Reichland village is savagely attacked, and the hand of chaos tightens around the greatest city-state in the empire. The adventurers face their greatest challenge yet, as they find themselves in a net of violence, deceit and betrayal. They must use diplomacy and negotiation, as well as their weapons and magic, to work out what is threatening the city, and who or what is behind it all. They must be vigilant. The minions of chaos will stop at nothing to destroy those who oppose them. Power Behind the Throne is the third adventure in the epic Enemy Within campaign, set in the city of Middenheim, as described in Middenheim, City of Chaos. Comes complete with maps and handouts, plus reference note on 22 major NPCs. Also contains details of carnival events for the adventurers to enjoy, from aristocratic garden parties to vicious minotaur fights. It can be played as a standalone adventure. This edition of Power Behind the Throne has been expanded with a brand new adventure, Carry On Up the Reich, a prologue to the main adventure, and a new chapter of the Enemy Within campaign, which adds new background, challenge and depth to this classic Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay supplement. And inside, well, the artwork is absolutely lovely. Games Workshop had so many great artists. Just beautiful pencil art. The maps in here as well are absolutely delightful. I love everything that they had to do. The production qualities were so much higher than everybody else at the time because they had the artists. And we start off with Carry On Up the Reich. So we've got an introduction to it. And basically this is a linking adventure, because one of the complaints in the original campaign was there weren't many leads to take the players from one adventure to the next, especially when there were so many other things they can do. One of the big things in Death on the Reich was that the players would get very involved with their barge. We've sort of talked about this before when I covered Death on the Reich, that a large chunk of that was the players get a barge and they start shipping up and down the Reich, carrying cargo and making money. And that can get very involving. So, this adventure, which people have complained about in the past, Johnny Nexus on the Critical Miss website, did so in very funny fashion, which James Wallace, the author of this adventure, came back and commented on. That basically the solution is to burn their barge. And that's one of the things on it, that while there's other things going on in this adventure, it burns the barge. So the players have no reason for travelling up and down the Reich, and they've left with the clues, which are still a bit tenuous. They've been strengthened a bit by this adventure, but it leads them on to Middenheim and the rest of the adventure and the campaign beyond that. And the big thing in this adventure is that the city-state of Middenheim is going to be overthrown. People are manipulating it, and there is power behind the throne. So the leader of the city-state is being manipulated, and the players have to discover who's behind it all. And that is a large chunk of it. While there's events going on with the carnival and lots of chances for role-playing, this is very open world. There's a lot of events, there's a city to explore, there's lots of characters, and that's going to put a lot of drain on the games master. Because not only do you have to monitor everything about it, so we've got the city of Middenheim, all the districts of it, the government, we've got a large amount of information here. Then we're on to the evil plot. You know, influencing the graph, the ruler of the city, what past events have happened, taxes. The taxes are unjust, cause the maximum ill will without promoting an armed rebellion. The fact that both dwarves and wizards are singled out for extra tax is an insult. Both groups have served the city for hundreds of years. So they're tearing the city apart by manipulating things. We've got the Todbringer family, the Middenheim Carnival, with lots of entertainments, you know, movement in crowds, chases around the carnival, shadowing people. Then we've got a section talking us through starting the adventure. Various pieces of news. The Templars' Arm. As I said, beautiful maps. Absolute gorgeous map of the Templars' Arm Inn. Something which seems to be so strong within Warhammer that inns are such a focus, storylines taking part in them. Creates very much a tone of the game. Detailing out the carnival. So we've got minor encounters, yokel baiting, the trollsayer cometh, a merchant is attacked, just lots of adventures, the street brats, major attractions of Carnival Week. So Blackpool illuminations. A big thing in the UK is Blackpool is a town in the north of England, and they put illuminations up. That's going to be a major event of this campaign as well. That Warhammer is full of puns. We've obviously had Carry On Up the Reich there, playing on the Carry On films, Snotball, a version of Stotling football, Blackpool illuminations. If you don't like that kind of thing, you're going to have to rewrite a lot of this adventure. There are so many puns thrown in, and you might not get them all. That's a big part of it. I have to admit, I ran a Warhammer adventure once and tried to take all the puns out, and then had a really obvious one pointed out that I hadn't picked up on. So they can get an audience with a graph. There's archery tournaments, ice dance championships. We've got making inquiries, talking to different people as they inquire around the city councils, the city guilds, the different temples, the powers that be. So we've got NPCs, really detailed out quite strongly here, and it explains how all of the background works, you know, what flunkies and lackeys they've got, overview of NPC interactions. So we start off with the major NPCs, and this is a large chunk of the book because it's going to be heavy role-playing here. So these characters all have different things. We've got the Chancellor, Joseph Sparsum. All the information about him, his personality and appearance, his skills, the stat block, locations where he can be found, reactions. He will react to different people, what knowledge he has, misconceptions. His attitude to all the other NPCs, we detail that. And his major problem. Chancellor's problem started about 10 months ago when he saw Lord Weismeyer inhaling a white powder. Then we've got the Graph's champion, Dieter Schmiedhammer. I think I'm pronouncing that right. And the same breakdown. His personality, his stats, his attitudes, and what storylines are going on. On a drinking spree 2 months ago, Dieter found himself alone talking to a pretty woman called Charlotte. This was a heavily disguised Brunhilde Kalak. Two sat in the secluded booth. She hypnotized Dieter into expressing his support. The court minstrel, Relaine Lafarelle. Again, breaking down all the ordinary stuff, their attitudes. He doesn't really have any other plots going on. The princess, Katerina Todbringer. Again, going through all her goals, her attitudes to other characters. The chaperone, again going through all of that. The Midden Marshals. So these are much shorter, where we've just got the descriptions and stat blocks. Their attitudes towards different people. The High Wizard and his deputy. The High Priest of Ulrich, his knowledge, misconceptions, and the blackmail scenario, which is a background for him. The Graf's paramour. The Ladies at Court. The Knight Eternal, Siegfried Prunkvold. Master of the Hunt, Alan Vendrell Fanmaris. The Commission Governor. Now, given this is... how long? Let's have a look for the last page number. 90 pages. About 40 pages are characters and their backgrounds. So roughly half the adventure is taken up with all this information. The baronial physician, Dr. Luigi Pavarotti. His attitudes, there seem to be no plots going on there. We've got the law lords of Middenheim. People and events. So as well as all of the carnival events people can go to, the interactions with NPCs, we've also got events happening, first encounters, where they will encounter the people. An encounter with spy Natasha Hess. Section details the possibility of the PCs discovering that Dieter has been hypnotized. Chaos Strikes by Night, a Chaos Band, a Skaven Champion and Skaven Warriors. Help, I'm a prisoner of beastmen. An ogre mercenary in there as well, and some beastmen. The Dope Dealer. So the pit where he deals out of. Traitor Unmasked. Lair of the Pawns. The Court Climax, as they take their information back to the Graf of the city. The doppelganger instance will be over. It will either be killed or captured. It will escape into the vast crowds of the carnival. So we've got the traitor unmasked finally, as they've found out the information. Different henchmen. What happens? The Lord waits. Wasmeyer at bay. And then we've got experience points and conclusions. So the results of it. What happens with the Cult of the Purple Hand, who has been carrying on through these adventures from the very beginning. Plot objectives with experience rewards. Carnival encounters and their experience awards. Role-playing awards. For a successful intervention in a plot to overthrow a city-state, the PCs may receive 200 EPs and 1 fate point each. If the party have obtained all of Wasmeyer's secret files, they receive an extra 100 EPs plus another fate point. Fate points being major things for player characters in Warhammer, basically a way of averting death. We've got some pages of standard NPCs here. Some charts here to make everything a little easier to find. The master attractions, NPC charts. There's NPC stats, so they can be filed more easily. These are all just obviously the same as we've seen elsewhere in the adventure, just cut down to their basic stats and information, so you can sort through it. Various handouts. A nice but very faded map. I have to say, if I hold that right up to the camera, you can see how faded it is. It's very hard to make out even on the page. Very detailed lines, which haven't been reproduced terribly well. The city map of Middenheim. Now, this is an absolutely fabulous adventure, which is difficult to sort of say how it will go, because it's just so open world. It's up to the players. You know, there's going to be lots of encounters, lots of role-playing. There's going to be all these events going on, all these meetings, which won't be the same every time that this is played. It's going to be very, very different between groups. And that makes it one of the strongest adventures I've ever seen, because there's just so much information here. But that does make it difficult for a games master. I definitely wouldn't recommend it for a starting off games master. I don't know whether the newer edition... I know that Cubicle 7, I think it's got, the Warhammer license, has brought out new versions of these, whether they've rewritten it to make all this passing of information around far easier for a games master. But in this version, you really have to read it. You really have to memorize things, and you're still going to end up scrabbling for pieces of information as you go through it. But it's really, really worth it. So that was Power Behind the Throne, and that won the poll this week with some 32% of the vote, which I was very glad of, because I've been waiting quite a while for the third part of the Enemy Within campaign to win a poll, because I've enjoyed covering the first two parts, and I knew this was something to look forward to. But I was slightly saddened as well, because the second place in this week's poll, Scared Stiffs for the Ghostbusters role-playing game, was winning for part of the week, and I was actually really looking forward to doing it. I'd covered Ghost Toasties a few months ago, the first adventure which came out for the RPG, and had an absolute scream doing so. And I've been Games Mastering Ghostbusters recently, as I ran a Halloween game of it, and it was a lot of fun. So it would have been nice to cover Scared Stiffs, but alas, it fell behind and came in eventually on only 23%. Just narrowly ahead of the third place, which was Valley of the Mists for Bushido role-playing game, which came in on 20%. Now, and again, I would have loved to have covered this. This is a 1982 adventure, so I've been enjoying recently looking through adventures from the very dawn of role-playing and seeing how they did things back then, whether there's anything being lost or gained as we've gone on through time. But alas, again, it's not one. And in joint final place, we've got the Fiery Trial for Babylon 5 and Operation Rapid Strike for Top Secret, both which came in on 13%. And Operation Rapid Strike came out in 1980, so everything I just said for Bushido very much counts on it as well. I'd have loved to have had a look through it. Again, alas, not this time. Anyway, they're all cleared out of the poll, and we have a retro RPG poll. So this week we have got in the Dark Text Sourcebook for Dark Conspiracy. Now this is one of my favourite role-playing games by Games Designers Workshop, one of my favourite role-playing manufacturers. But it doesn't tend to be very popular in these polls. I don't know why. I absolutely love it, and this is a sourcebook of alien equipment, organic type technology, things that the alien invaders who are trying to take over Earth have brought with them. Fantastic stuff. It'd be a really enjoyable look through. Second up, we've got Denizens of Earthdawn Volume 2. Again, one of my favourite role-playing games is Earthdawn. Favourite fantasy settings, amazing stuff. And this is a sequel to Book 1, obviously, and it continues covering through the various races in it. Because while Earthdawn has humans, dwarves, elves, etc. in it, they are a very different version of them. And it's got a lot of other races. We've got Windlings, Obsidimen, Tuskrang, etc. And even Orcs and Trolls are very, very different from their typical fantasy equivalents. It'd be a joy to look through. Next up, we've got Spycraft. Now this is a D20 based game, came out in the rush of games in the early 2000s, and I've kind of covered it before because it's the basis of the rules used in the Stargate role-playing game, which I have covered on the channel. But this is a James Bond spy type game, and it's one of the last games I've got to cover rather than just source books. I think it and Fading Suns D20 that I've got as well, so both D20 books to cover at some point. After that, we've got Paranormal Animals of Europe, also by Fazer, this time for Shadowrun. Now, again, I've covered the Paranormal Animals of North America book before, and I'd be interested to see whether they learnt much from that book. Because one of the disappointments with the North America book for me was how many truly wild animals in there that you would never really use. You know, lots of sea monsters and the like. But not creatures which would be used as guard animals, which might come in adventures more regularly. It made it an interesting read, but not a terribly useful one. Let's see if they learnt anything with the Paranormal Animals of Europe book. And finally, we've got the Crash Course Manual for Paranoia. Now, this is a sourcebook updating the setting after friend computer crashes and the citizens are left to their own devices. High programmers are taking over sections, everything's falling into chaos, and there's still a lot of paranoia around because people believe it might just be a test, for example. It's a fun update. I'm not sure how successful it was, but it'll be interesting to look through. Let's see what wins the poll. And over on Drive-Thru RPG, well, I've been updating a bunch of my Dungeons & Dragons stuff to Dragonbane. Now, this is an interesting process, because where in Dungeons & Dragons you might have a creature which does a claw attack doing D8 damage. In Dragonbane, you're writing up the descriptions of what it does. So it leaps at you and claws you with its claws. It pins you down with one paw while scratching at your face. And it's really quite interesting writing up these, especially when a creature gets multiple attacks and you have to do multiple versions of it, because a creature can only do one of each attack per round. So it's quite entertaining coming up with 6 different attacks a creature might make, or whatever, to make combat quite interesting and different. Now, they're all available on DriveThruRPG, which there'll be a link down below, but they'll also be on the shared Google Drive for patrons of Laird or Librarian status, and the link to the Patreons down below as well, if you're interested in joining and getting access to all of those over 250 booklets now I've put up on DriveThruRPG and made available to Patreons. Over on RPG Gamer, well, we're finishing off, or we're continuing through Young Jedi Adventures. Now, these are aimed at kids, so it's not taking a lot of time, especially as they are repeating a lot of the same characters and settings, so there's not terribly much to add to the website between the reviews, but it's a fun look at a kids series, and there's some entertaining stuff in there. But anyway, I think as usual I've been wittering on for quite long enough, so thank you very much for watching. But as always, most of all, you look after yourselves, and I'll catch you later. Bye now.